Hey, Coach, super excited you decided to join us on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions or leave a comment down below, make sure you subscribe. And make sure you go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. It's a great resource, mentoring, everything you would ever want to become a better basketball coach. So go check it out and enjoy the video.
Okay, we are recording now. Hi, this is Coach Sager here on Coach Unplugged. I have a very special guest today, Myron Epps. He is the founder and head basketball trainer of Aztec Academy and also an assistant basketball coach for Fresno State University. He is going to talk about skill development and also his basketball journey, which you will find out that he has a plethora of information, as I always like to say. So I would like to proudly introduce Coach Epps today.
How's it going, Jake?
It's going great. So, Coach Epps, this usually takes the longest part, but could you tell our listeners basically your basketball journey and where you started and where you ended? And I'm sure that's going to take a long time, but and you can give just a little bit snippets, and I can always ask more questions, but kind of your journey within the game of basketball.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And right now, currently, I'm at Fresno Pacific with Coach Haydock.
All right, Fresno Pacific.
We're in the Pac West.
Yep.
Yeah, we're in the Pac West Conference.
Yep.
We're based out of Fresno. I was born and raised in Tulare, California. Went to Tulare Union High School and played for Coach Dave Shoemaker. Before Shoemaker got to us, he was actually an assistant coach at University of Pacific. Played there. Actually won a section title. Played in state playoffs and all that good stuff against a good Redondo Union team. That had a couple of kids that went off the Pac-12 and whatnot. Also during high school, I was lucky enough to play for Darren Matsubera, who's a travel coach, and our travel team was EBO. So on that team, we had guys like Matt Barnes, Chris Jeffries, Carlos Boozer, Sean Stevenson. So I got to experience a lot of things early on in my basketball career through travel. After travel, went over to San Diego State. I signed with Fred Trinkle. And there was actually 8 of us that went in with that recruiting class and played at San Diego State for 4 years. After our freshman year, Steve Fisher was brought in and then was lucky enough to play and learn from Coach Fisher and be a part of that original, turnaround at the foundation. So we went from 20 game losses, for seasons to actually getting to the NCAA tournament in the senior year before departing. And then ever since then, it's been rolling pretty good.
Yeah, it's
I'm sorry.
I said San Diego State, ever since Coach Fisher kind of took over that program, it's done very well. So that must be something that you are really proud of and being part of, and say that you're part of that whole turnaround in that program. It's got to be a pretty amazing feeling, and you probably learned a lot under Coach Fisher as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was very, very knowledgeable. I mean, as soon as you walked on campus, you could just tell that the entire shift, the buzz was out. Kids ran, were bought in. Was a man of a lot of words, but very, very personal, very wise. And he's just, always got the best out of his players. So, definitely cherish and appreciate that time that I had in a relationship. After San Diego State, actually moved back. Got situated in the area, and then started to coach high school basketball. So coached all local schools, got about 12 years of high school experience over the years with Tulare Western, Tulare Union, helped found Mission Oak High School, the basketball program, and then also with Central San Jose City College, wonderful prep college in Delano, and then now at Fresno Pacific. Also while in the Valley with basketball in the high school ranks. I was the AAU district guy for a couple of years, kind of overseeing the travel teams and the events and all that good stuff and whatnot for AAU. And then also helped host one of the all-star games that we have in our area, and it was called the North versus South. And basically our model with that was trying to get the top 30 kids in the section for the boys and girls, get them on one court, invite as many colleges as possible, and kind of just present the talent that we've got in the Valley. Just kind of letting everyone know, like, hey, Central Valley does have talent, and this is what it looks like when it's all in the same court. And it was a great thing, great crowds, coaches loved it, and it was just fun for, us, the ones putting it on too, to watch as a fan, because we really did have a lot of good basketball. It was just spread out, but when it was all in one court, it was, it was something nice.
Awesome. Okay, and so and now you're an assistant basketball coach as well.
Yep.
And you're one of your big things is this whole, and I've been looking at it and looking at the website and over the time, is this Aztec Basketball Academy. Could you describe your mission and purpose behind that whole thing and what it really is about?
It started a little over 10 years ago. And what it was is, we were in the area, hadn't really, there was no skill developers. There was actually no one really in the section doing a lot of, skill work. And it started off as something as kids just kind of approaching and asking to, do some workouts. And then just got the idea of like, the guys down south, the guys up north, they're already, so many steps ahead of the kids in the central section. What can we do to kind of close that gap? So that's kind of when we came with the idea, like, hey, you know what? We'll start the Aztec Academy and start, offering skill development, trying to help these guys get their skills up and do what we can to try to close that gap and help the guys in the central section, be able to get the looks and the scholarships and all that good stuff too.
So that's awesome. And, when I reviewed your DVDs and I looked at it, you talk a lot about triple threat. Just, for our coaches out there, what are some ways that coaches can really emphasize and train their players in the triple threat position? Because I think it's so important, and it's a lost art, because I see a lot of players, even watching the collegiate players right now, that they're not always in the constant triple threat. They're lazy, they're holding the ball up over their heads. That fundamental sound is kind of losing. So what is your advice to coaches and how they can get their players to be in that position at all times?
A lot of it comes with repetition, and then getting the players to buy in. It's kind of like what you had mentioned earlier. It seems like it's a lost art. It seems like, a lot of the kids have lost interest in it, and just, the positives of being in triple threat. One thing that we like to do, especially at the high school level, is, we'll go on repetition in our individual skill groups. We'll do a repetition before practice. It's implemented in the shooting drills. We implement it into attack drills to the basket, and we're constantly, verbally, speaking over and over, the benefits of being in triple threat.
So is that like one of your things that's just one of your points of emphasis as a coach and trainer and everything that you do, whether it's, you're coaching a team or you're training?
Absolutely. Big believer in a triple threat. You can get so many things accomplished, and we just don't see that. You see a lot of players that are coming down, making a lot of moves standing straight up.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as explosive as they could be, and just trying to get back to the basics, which have always been effective.
So if I were if I'm a coach, why would I tell a coach, or why would I tell a player the why behind why we're always in a triple threat? What's the reason? We like to talk about the why, because I think it's important as coaches that we teach players the why behind why we do things. Could you kind of give some suggestion of why it's so important?
It's super important because you're explosive. You're always in an explosive position. And, by being explosive, it helps give you an advantage. And, when you get to certain levels and you're playing certain, stages of basketball, any advantage you can possibly get, even at the youth level,
right?
You got to take it. And you've got to take it. And explosiveness is one. Got to be able to get to the basket, got to be able to attack. Too many times we're standing straight up, and the first thing we want to do is we want to bend down before we take off or do what's next.
Right.
So it's about trying to, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I just agree with you. I agree with you so much on that whole standpoint. Do you feel like sometimes players tend to use too many moves instead of just being in a good athletic position to get their first step?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we've been emphasizing over and over, with the sessions and workouts is if it takes more than a couple of moves, you took too long, and, get rid of the basketball. Everything that you do with a purpose. So if it does call for a crossover, we cross and go. There's no hang. There's nothing fancy. You're literally crossing the ball over. You're making moves. You're pushing off your back foot.
Do you think that sometimes we've made the game overcomplicated at times?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then how do you scale that? Or how do you get players that maybe have been overcomplicated with all of these things and try to break it down a little bit in a sense where they can really buy into keeping it more simpler? I know that's a two-part question, honestly, but it's kind of hard. I don't know if you could get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. It takes it seems like it's a massive culture thing that's got to have to be on the same page to kind of help change that. But, it takes the kids, got to be open, got to be willing. And there's so many ways to be successful. Share the basketball, everyone. The main focus in, most modern teens and most modern kids' mindset. They want to score the basketball. They want to do it a certain way. So it's about just having the freedom and the liberty to actually get in, work with those kids, start with them mentally first, break them down, and then kind of have them see the advantages and reap those benefits from, sharing the basketball and playing basic but effective.
For sure. I'm sure that repetition has everything to do with this too, but how can a coach build in rip throughs and first step in their practice? I think the hardest thing for high school coaches and stuff, is the time. We're always constrained on time, for skill development. How does a coach be able to implement something like a rip through or a first step in their practices so these things can be effective when it gets to tip off in a regular season game?
No, absolutely. The benefit, if possible, what we've, done in the area and coaches that can is, we always try to add at least 15 minutes to, of skill development to the back end or front end of a practice. And this is what we're teaching the principles and the things like triple threats, making sure we're low, making sure we're swinging that ball out. We're not just going through the motions, and we're also pushing off our back foot at the same time. So we're literally jumping into the move with all our force. And then also with the skill development, with the triple threat, with attack moves and shooting, if possible, it always helps to have a strength and conditioning guys on the same page. What we've done also is, we'll use medicine weight balls and in the placement of a basketball, start working on our force. And then we've also used ankle bands to actually do, complete with the jab step. So you've got your ankle bands on and you've got your medicine ball, and you complete your jab steps, working on your force, working on your strength, and that just transitions over so well, once you hit the court.
One thing you talked about is 15 minutes before and 15 minutes afterwards. For my little plug-in, somebody, you've coached high school too, is I feel like a lot of times that the stuff that I put at the end of my practice gets cut out. So, for my opinion, I think you can touch on this. I think it's easier to start with skill development at times because that guarantees that you're not going to cut it out in your daily practice.
No, absolutely. And you're right. Sometimes in a practice, anything happens. Things get cut. You miss some of the things you're going to work on. Drills go longer than expected. Getting them right off the bat is always the way to go. They're fresh. They're going to be mentally sharp. And then, whatever's left, if possible, at the end of practice, kind of follow up with more for a mental aspect.
For sure.
Repetition.
Absolutely. All right. So I think you're inside of someone that has trained collegiate athletes and multiple athletes in the game of basketball. I think as coaches, we kind of want to know when training, what are the biggest gaps that you see in player development when they come to you? Because that's your focus. One of your focuses, that's one of your strengths as a basketball coach and as a trainer. Some of the biggest gaps that you see within, and I have another question that leads into that, but you could elaborate on that a little bit first. So what are some of the gaps that you see within a lot of players right now?
A lot of gaps that I've seen at all levels, lack of fundamentals.
Okay.
There's a lack of fundamentals physically, and just a lack of interest mentally. It's not the cool thing to do, to be fundamentally sound, make good passes, handle the ball correctly, handle the ball at a certain level, certain length. That's the core that we see that's missing. We see the desire at all levels of guys want to make the fancy move, hold on to the ball too much, and, do the difficult shots, but no one has a core of sound fundamentals.
Yeah, we talk about this too, is that I feel like sometimes our kids play too many games and doesn't do enough training. I think that they got to take time to get that skill development in. But the other thing is, how can coaches improve that then? The lack of fundamentals, or what can we do as coaches to help support that gap?
I think it's a culture thing, and it goes supportive across the board. You've got in our area, we have tons of coaches that appreciate fundamentals. They're desiring it when the kids to go after it also. It's got to be the same with AAU too. AAU and high school have to be on the same page. But we got to preach fundamentals, and even more fundamentals to the kids, and then also help them understand and see the benefits. We watch a lot of fancy moves and stuff on TV, not knowing that the guys are doing this. The fundamentals are sharp.
Real sharp.
Every level you go up, sharp, and every level you go to, the fundamentals are better. That's the part we don't talk about.
I read Kobe Bryant's book, Black Mamba, and all the hard work that he put in, or Ray Allen. And, Ray Allen talks about that he would go in 3 hours before a game and shoot, and Kobe's already there at 12:30 and the game's at 7 o'clock. All these things that people don't see, but it's so true. And, it looks so easy that Steph Curry can do it, but man, that guy works so hard to get to where he is. People just think that they can pick it up. And I think it's a cultural thing. Is like you say, it's like I always tell people and listeners that kids just think there's an app for that, right? So I'm going to do a double back cross, and I can just click a button. It's just going to happen for me. You know what I'm saying? But it's not really how it is. You got to work really hard.
Yeah, and we've had that before. We've had maybe someone will come in and they'll want like, hey, teach my kid a double crossover, teach my kid this and this and this, and I'm like, well, hey, he doesn't dribble the ball to he can't do basic crossovers and keep a ball without losing it in a repetition of 50 yet. So we need to get his fundamentals solid first, and then we'll worry about all the fancy stuff later. But right now we've got to get his core basketball skill set better ASAP.
So I watched some clips of your DVD and some of the things that you do. And I thought that some of the things you do are very innovative and different, but also effective. So what makes your training maybe more effective than some of the traditional methods of skill development? Just basic drills. What do you think that makes what you do at Aztec Academy, what you've done with other players, what you do at the collegiate level, just with your knowledge and what you do with training, maybe more different than some traditional methods?
We try to throw as many multiple situations as possible.
Okay.
We view it as not only just training the athlete, it's physical. We're trying to work in the mental. We're trying to throw cardio in there and conditioning. We're trying to, give them multiple things to sort through mentally while they're going through the drills. That's more realistic for a basketball game, trying to break a press or, get to the rim. There's multiple things you've got to be able to process quickly. And that's our main, focus in the drills is, yes, we're working on basketball skill. Yes, some of it's game speed, game realistic, but we're more trying to process things faster mentally also. Another thing that we're really big on too that we didn't really get to in the video is we have a lot of defensive concepts, a lot of defensive drills that we work on. Majority of trainers, you'll see them working on offensive moves, offense. But our question is, can you guard somebody? Because if you can't guard anybody, at the end of the day, that's the biggest liability. So a lot of times we incorporate a lot of defensive agility drills. Right.
And you're not going to be playing at the end of the game if you can't play defense anyways. So I agree with that.
Absolutely not. And if you score 30 and give up 30, you can have a seat.
I've watched the state tournament this year in the state of Wisconsin. I've watched the NCAA tournament, and I just talked to Mike Lee last week, and he's about mindfulness, and he said there's a study out there that 40% of the time people are in the present and focus on what they're doing. So the support of the IQ in drills, I think, is really huge. As I think about it more, as I've interviewed him and talked to you, is that I'm watching these games, and it's not about jump shots. Some of the decision-making and the mistakes that teams are making at the end of games are costing their season, and I think that's so important that as coaches that we're constantly teaching the mental side of the game as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And that's, and we hear that, you hear them say, basketball is 90% mental, and it is. And, big believer, and we stand by that, the basketball team, the basketball player, it's all going to be determined upon the ability and how fast they can, process information and retain it while moving. Process and retain. And the better we get at doing that, I think the more chances you have to be successful in those tight situations where you've got to make a quick call, where they've got to be able to adjust, they've got to be able to retain the information while doing so many other things on the court and kind of, sifting through so many other pressures.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. So being able to train multiple athletes, what do you think that some of the key it factors are for the kids that make it to the next level or have the most success after leaving you and being trained by you? What are some of the components that you would – I'm sure they have some similar characteristics than other players that you've trained before.
Yep, and we can tell usually when we get them. Of course, it takes being blessed. You got to have, be a decent athlete. You got to
have a little bit of the Zion Williamson factor, a little bit.
You got to have a little bit of athleticism going for you. But right away, it's the willingness to work, we can see it sometimes even at an early age. It's the kids that come in, they've got the skill set, they've got the athleticism, or not necessarily skill set, but the potential. but the willingness to work. The parents don't have to force them. The parents don't have to force them to do work at home. It's just a 24/7, passion for the game and to get better. And they love to work. They love to get better. They love the process, and they're self-motivated. And usually when we get those guys and girls, they do really well, and you see them go off.
Yeah, I think that the key to getting kids now to be really good at something is for them to understand the process. And I like that you said that. We talked about that a couple weeks ago on a show, is that, a lot of times we're so concerned about wins and losses, but it's really about the process and developing throughout the entire process of being a basketball player. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you could coach one thing, what's your favorite thing to coach when it comes to skill development?
Favorite thing to coach? Post. I would say post players, high post. Yeah, yep. Post moves, catching out, catching. And more for your shorter guys, your undersized post players. And that's kind of like what I was, but working on face up, working on strategies to get those big men in foul trouble, be creative around the basket.
Yeah, I
use your
mine is finishing, and so similar. I like teaching kids how to finish. I think that's my favorite thing to teach and practice. So for advice for young coaches, so do you have any advice for young coaches that are just getting started in their basketball journey and career in coaching?
You know what? Learn as much as possible.
Okay.
I remember when it's websites and, companies like yours that
Yep.
really got me going as a young coach. The first thing I did is just start researching and gathering all the information I could. Always having the mindset that we don't know anything as a coach and we're always learning. It's just always, helps you evolve and keep growing. And then definitely try to surround yourself with some seasoned coaches that have been there, that offer you sound advice. They've learned how to win, and then more importantly, they've also got the proof of developing other coaches and building good cultures.
Okay. So the last question I have for you, what's next with basketball for you? You just kind of, carrying out what you're doing at the college and with the skill development, or do you have any other plans in the future within the game of basketball?
Right now, just enjoying where I'm at right now, helping out Coach Haydock at Fresno Pacific, definitely enjoying doing the skill building, and then always appreciative of him just allowing, me to still work with the youth and do the things that I do with Aztec. That's rare, and you really don't get that. So definitely, having a good time with that, wanting to become a better coach, learn more, of course, with the recruiting aspects and everything that's needed for the university, kind of just take it from there and see what happens.
Awesome. Well, Coach Epps, we really appreciate your time today. I really enjoyed your interview because you really came back to the fundamentals. Sometimes we overcomplicate things, and I think it's just really nice to reassure that sometimes the game is simpler than it really seems. So it was a very great joy to have you on the show today, and we appreciate your time here at Coach Unplugged. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, Coach, hope you liked that video. If you're looking for more videos just like that, check out teachhoops.com, up above or down below in the show notes. I do not think you'll be disappointed. One-on-one calls, office hours, you name it, it's there for you. Learn from me. Let me help you become a better coach.